All right, there we go. Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us today for the Write Your Bestseller in 1 Hour workshop. I've done this so many times. I actually originally created this, if you will, way back in at the end of 2015. And we have done it with so many people in so many places, live and of course virtual, all kinds of times. We've had folks that have actually been able to write as much as 5 or 10 books just from what you're going to learn here in this workshop today. I've had a few people tell me, hey, Steve, you teach too much, you've given away too much of the insider secrets on this. But, and I thought about changing it up, but I decided that I really do want to keep it this way because I want you to leave here empowered to really truly know everything you need to know about writing your book. Now, of course, we're here to help you any way we can, but I want to really truly empower you in this workshop. So, with that said, welcome to Write Your Bestseller in 1 Hour. Um, the name of our company, of course, is Thriving Bestsellers. And over the course of the last 17 years, we've worked with just a ton of authors. In fact, in that very first year that we brought out this program to the masses, we used to do it one-on-one for very high-end clients. And in that first year that we did it for the masses of people, we actually helped over 156 people reach over 100,000 people on day one of the launch of their book. Pretty exciting stuff. What can happen? Because what I can tell you as a 37-year marketing professional, more than anything else, the most foundational piece of your marketing is always going to be your best seller. It's going to be where you start. If you wanted to be a medical doctor, you absolutely would have to graduate from medical school. And if you want to market yourself, your product, your goods, your services, any of those kind of things, you need that credential of having been a bestseller. I love how Seth Godin put it. He said, if you're writing your book to make money, then don't. But if you want to make money, you absolutely need to have a bestseller. So, what can we expect to talk about here today? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. I want to help you understand the benefits of being a best-selling author. But most importantly, I want to dive deeply into our bestseller formula. My name is Steve Kidd. I'm an international best-selling author of 22 books and counting. Um, and we have used this system. More than 4,000 people now have been able to write, publish, market their books to bestseller, and everything that goes beyond it. We want you to be a bestseller because someone is waiting on you. I know that you have a story to tell. You have a solution that you offer to the world. Maybe even people come to you for answers. And maybe some of those things you're not even, charging people for. It's who you are at the heart and soul and core of you are. And you need to share that message with your world. I want to encourage you and empower you with this concept. If you can reach a person today, it is a good day. Often we worry too much about the future and we try so hard to reach the masses that we forget about the impact that something as simple as a smile can make on a person when we come in contact with them. So we're going to not worry too much about the millions, and we're going to focus in really tightly on who is the one person that I can help and what message can I share with them. Now, some of the benefits of being a best-selling author, it'll help you potentially get more speaking engagements. It absolutely, as I said before, is the foundational element in your marketing. And it's the credential that, that more than anything is the one that you need. In fact, the folks that I've worked with that are medical doctors would be the first ones to tell you they get more out of being a best-selling author, and they've gotten more speaking engagements, more invitations to be on television shows and things like that from being a best-selling author than they have from the 20 years they've been in the industry that they're in. Now, at any point throughout this, if you know, hey, I'd like to get a little more help from Steve, I created a really easy website for you. It's bookhelpapplication.com. Today or anytime in the future, you can go to bookhelpapplication.com. It's a simple structure that just lets me know where you are in the process. Not necessarily meaning that necessarily you're going to be buying anything from me, but it lets me know, what you're thinking, where you are in the process, and all of that. Now, I want to talk to you about a few of the people that we've worked with. This is my good friends, Forrest Folan and Anthony Steele. They actually, at one point, were coaches that I worked with, and they're physical trainers. They used to work, well, they still do work one on one with people, but they wanted to do something that was a bigger impact in the world. They created a whole new division of their company to help train trainers how to be able to market their company, and they built it on the back of their book, Awakening to Your Fitness Journey. And from that, made over $200,000 in that new branch of their company in that first year. And of course, their book was a bestseller. And this is Pastor Andrea Humphrey. Pastor Humphrey is an international speaker. She's a minister. She had several books prior to when she came to us, and she said, "I got my new book, and I'd really like to see my book finally make it on the bestseller list." Well, she not only made it onto the bestseller list, she made it to number 84 out of all best-selling books on Amazon. Now think about all the books that are on Amazon. She was number 84 out of all of them. And from that, within just the first 2 weeks, she saw that her other books were selling. She started getting invitations to come and speak places. In fact, she had so much traffic that came in from it that her website actually crashed from the amount of traffic that we were able to generate in the initial campaign of her book coming out as a bestseller. And then, for those of you that are listening now, or anybody listening on the replay, you may have heard of Stuart Ross. He's often referred to as the Tony Robbins of the UK. Stuart Ross, of all the cool things he had done prior to when he came to us, he had never written a best-selling book. And so we helped him take his book that he had written called Growth Hacks, and we helped him turn it into a best-selling book so that he could add to all of the amazing things he had done in the world the credential that he had always felt like he was lacking. And that was the credential of #1 bestseller. And then I love being able to get to talk about Dr. Alicia Griffith. I had referred earlier to you um, about doctors and the impact. Dr. Humphrey, or Dr. Griffith rather, was able to not only make her book, of course, a bestseller, it was #2 in all parenting books, in all the books. The book is on autism. She's a medical doctor. She's an audiologist that works specifically with the parents of children who have autism and has a child that is autistic. And she said, "It makes me more of an expert than all of the credentials and all the years of experience that I have behind my name." And she was able to be on a couple of different shows, including a couple little shows you might have heard of called The Today Show and Good Morning America, all on the back of her book, Amazing Gift. And then there's Carl Michelle. Carl Michelle, if you haven't read his book, totally cool book. It's called 365 Hip Hop. Carl takes songs that you would not expect to be motivational, and he finds the most incredible lines in them. Now, his marketplace is high school kids, and prior to his book coming out, he would call and couldn't get them to return his calls to offer to come and speak there for free. I met with him about 3 months after his book came out. I mean, he said, hey, I'm booked out about 6 months in advance at about $2,000 per speaking gig, all because of the fact that no longer am I just a best-selling author. I'm the international best-selling author, Carl Michelle. It made all the difference for him. And in fact, you could look up at 365 Hip Hop. I haven't looked it up in a couple of weeks, but a couple of weeks ago, even still, even though the book was marketed, its launch day was January 1st of 2016, it still was in the top 10 list on the Amazon site. And yes, you can see there pictured, he's showing a picture of his book with Common. He's been at some pretty cool appearances just from the concept of having put his book out. So, what is it that I want to make sure I drive home to you? And that's this. We don't just write books, we write best sellers. Put that in your mind. You don't just want to be an author, you want to be a best seller. And again, as I told you before, anytime now or throughout, if you need help, bookhelpapplication.com is the place to go to get help. Because what I want you to know is writing your book and becoming a bestseller. And I always feel kind of bad at this point because it's kind of like when the first person told you that it wasn't Santa putting the presents under the tree, that it's actually a formula. There is actually a systematic formula to know what consumers, what your ideal reader wants. It's easy, it's money and time saving. And what we do when you follow it, we guarantee absolutely you will be a bestseller. If you follow the systematic approach, we can absolutely predict to you the results and the outcome. That's what I do all day long. Now, let me give you the first piece of help and advice because you're going to be asking me, well, what kind of book should I write, Steve? And I'm going to tell you, Amazon calls them short reads. And I'm going to give you some specific information what a short read is in here in just a second. But short reads are the books that are the most in demand right now. They're so in demand, Amazon actually had to pull them out and make a whole new subcategory that is just for short reads. A short read is a book of 100 pages or less. Because what Amazon has found out is that if your book is 100 pages or less, more than 60% of the readers that get it will finish the book. And that's important because at the end of the book is where we're going to, offer them to do the next steps with us and give them the information of the action they can take. So we want them to finish the book. If your book is 101 to 200 pages, it's only about 20% of the people that will actually finish the book. Now, here's the worst part of it. If your book is more than 200 pages, it's less than 3% of people that ever finish the book. So the standard, typical 300, 350 page book, and you can probably think back now of the books that are on your shelf that are really great. Maybe you've even gotten really great information out of them, but you've never quite finished them because it's less than 3% of readers that finish books that long. In fact, some of you, I'm sure, have heard of John Maxwell. He has over 100 books that he's written. And when he discovered how powerful writing the shorter books are, he took his books and transitioned them from being 300-page books to taking each of the different topics out of the book and breaking them into individual books. People in John Maxwell's organization often will refer to them as the blue book or the green book or the red book. And he just takes essentially what would have been a chapter or a couple of chapters and puts them into a short read that allows people to be able to get the information, make a move, and then move on to the next thing. It's much more targeted. Now, Seth Godin, I love Seth. He's an amazing, incredible marketer, and almost all of the books that he's ever written are considered to be short reads. In fact, 5 of them are less than 100 pages. And one of the coolest books he's written, if you ever read V is for Vulnerable, you really must read that book. Such great insight into vulnerability and the power of it in marketing. Remember the word vulnerable because we're going to talk about that one again here in a little bit. But it's only 64 pages. Now, here's another book you might have heard of. Anybody ever heard of the book Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown? It's technically a 160-page book, but if you look at it and you look at the way they formatted it for print, it has very wide margins. The chapters start half or more of the way down the page. They've done a lot of things so that they could expand it, because back when Gifts of Imperfection came out, the publishing companies were telling you if your book wasn't 150 pages or more, it wasn't a quote unquote real book. Never was true, but that's what they were convincing people like Brene. But this book would technically be considered a short read. And it was, of course, the number one best-selling book in self-help, a nearly impossible category to make number one in. And she was able to do that. And then who knows of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Some of you have probably, if you've ever worked in corporate, you've probably been handed this little book and told to read it. And you were probably really excited to find out in large print edition, it's a 95-page book. 95 pages. This book's been translated into 44 different languages and has sold well over 28 million copies. In fact, I think it may even be over 30 million now. Great book, Who Moved My Cheese? And just think about it, if you could do for your company the culture document and you can put in the hands of your reader a book. So rather than putting Who Moved My Cheese in their hand, put the book that outlines this is who our company is. This is what we believe at our core. And you can create your culture from day one with the people with that same kind of book without giving them Think and Grow Rich or Who Moved My Cheese or, other books like that. It could actually be your company's culture document. I hope that sparked somebody's thoughts of, ooh, I might want to think about that some more. And then I love sharing this book with you. It's called Marketing in 1,000 Words or Less. This book is literally 6 pages long. It's 999 words, but it was a number one best-selling book. It's had over 40,000 downloads worldwide, and that's actually an old screenshot of it. I'd be interested to see how many it's done now. Um, and like you said, literally 6 pages long, but it's just chocked full of really great information about marketing. Even as a marketing professional, I really appreciated how well they really dug into marketing. So more is not more, it's just more. So what are you going to write? Um, Let me ask you a couple questions. Think about this for a second. What do you want to be known for? What programs are you focused on offering? And it's a cool time of year because we're, getting ready to go into 2025. So we can be thinking about, what is that primary thing I want to focus on in 2025? And we can still get that book out this year. Um, and a great way to think about it is, and I hope that you've identified your ideal client. If not, let's sit down together, you and I individually, and let's really talk about your individual target client. But hopefully you know that. If you were sitting next to that person at the airport and you're waiting for a flight, what is the one thing that you absolutely want to make sure that you say to them? Of all the things you could tell them, if you only had 5 minutes and you wanted to share one thing with them, what would that one thing be? Do you need any help figuring that out? Because again, I'm here to help you in any way that I can with all of that. So, with that said, grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. I've seen people do this with sticky notes, whiteboards, on the back of napkins. I mean, you name something that you can write in. Maybe not prick your finger and write in blood. That's just probably no. And then in the center of the page, I'd like you to draw a circle. Don't put the word title or topic in it, but just draw a circle. And inside of that, if you already have a working title for your book, go ahead and put the working title of your book in there. If not, just put a concept. Let's go back to what we were talking about a page or two ago. What's that one thing? The one thing that you absolutely want to make sure that you say to the people. Like, for example, if it's the culture document for your company, what is the primary part of your culture for your company? What is the, if you will, hero's journey of how you formed the company? So anyway, in that bullseye, you're going to put either the working title or the topic. Okay, and I want to give you a second to think about that and write that down. This part I don't want to rush through too much. I know I was talking a little fast at the beginning there to kind of helpfully get you inspired and stuff because I definitely want you to be. But now I want you to really be able to dig in. This is going to be I encourage you to do this as work right along with us. And I want to give you the time to do it. So even as you're writing down your topic and your title or topic in that, that's going to be our bullseye in the center of our page. And then I want you to draw out from that four lines, one going up, down, left, right, north, south, east, west, however you want to think of it. Okay. And those are going to be our four quadrants. You're going to discover throughout this every single book, there's some outliers. Every once in a while, I have somebody that challenges me, what about such and such book? But every single book really basically boils down to these four concepts. And we're going to walk you through each one of them to keep it simple for you, but also really clear. All right. So we're going to start with this line over here that's going to your right, pointing east, if you will. And in that, we're going to talk about the who and the why. We're going to call this section one. So these aren't necessarily chapters. Section one could be one chapter. It could be your introduction to the book, or it could be 10 chapters. So don't let yourself get right now hung up on formatting issues, which is what chaptering is. Okay, right now, just really focus on, being able to get these down. And this is going to be who are you and how did you discover it? I'm going to help you break down because we buy from people that we know, like, and trust. Okay. We want to give them at the beginning of our book a little bit about us so that they know that we're the person that they can rely on, so that they can know who we are, so that they can like who we are before we tell them what to do. And we can find out and tell them specifically why that's going to impact them. And the structure for this is who I am today, but it wasn't always this way. And this is what I learned. So I'm going to encourage you to take a couple of minutes here. All right. And I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to go backwards for a second. I want you to draw 3 lines underneath of that first line going to the east. Okay. And we're going to put, and it doesn't matter which order, whether you do it left to right or right to left, we're going to put the best now, worst then, and why you're sharing this. So we're going to put this is my life now, but it wasn't always that way. And this is how I discovered it. So when we're talking about, so I'm going to talk you through each of those as you're writing. Feel free to keep writing as I kind of help explain this. This is who I am today. This is my life now. This isn't about being somebody who is arrogant and needs to brag about all the money they have in the bank, or it's not like some of those things that we've all seen online where the person's taking the picture of themselves next to the Lamborghini, unless they actually own the Lamborghini. You'd be surprised how many of those people don't. I have a friend of mine that is well, he passed away a year ago, unfortunately, but it is a multi-billionaire, and he used to like to go to to the high-end car dealerships, and take pictures with the cars, and then do in the caption, "This is how the person in your upline got this picture. Would you like to be taken in a picture with the Lamborghini too?" And he could do that because he knew that all those people. But we're not really doing that. We're talking about the concept of the vision of what, if they follow the thing we're going to teach them in this book, what is so much better in life now because you're doing it. So, for example, any of you that know me know that I've been on a weight loss journey for the last, I guess it's about 6 months now. I'm almost 90 pounds down. Um, it's pretty exciting, really. Um, and in here is where I would talk about things like the capability to be able to walk when I really was nearly unable to, and stuff like that. Those are the kind of things that you can talk about. What freedom is like, what it's like to be able to not be out of breath. That would be, if you're talking about weight loss, it would be that kind of thing. It's sharing your own personal life in a way to be a vision for them that they can put themselves into. And then but it wasn't always that way. Remember me talking about that word vulnerable before? This is where vulnerable really comes in. Vulnerability is valuable. The more willing to be vulnerable you are for your reader, the more you're going to impact their life. Now, I'm not telling you you have to go to some place that you aren't comfortable or can't go, but I am going to encourage you to stretch yourself. Go into some of those darker places. Be willing to share with them the downside to it. The thing that is the difference between helping somebody transform and just standing on top of a mountain and preaching a sermon at somebody. And I can get away with saying that because I'm a third generation minister. So I can talk about preaching at somebody. Um, but seriously, I'm teasing. But the difference between that is that when you really want to help somebody transform, you have to go down the mountain and get into the valley with them. You have to let them know, I know where you're at because I've been there. Here's what I went through. There's an old concept in selling that is feel, felt, found. I know how you feel because I've felt that way myself before, but this is what I found. And it's a great way to help people be able to make a transformation. So we go in and we tell them the story of what it was like. And again, if I'm using my own weight loss journey, I can talk to you about what it was like to literally, tell the person it's like, I'm so unhealthy right now. If I could even just get to the place where I was healthy enough that I could consider the possibility of getting healthy. What it was like to not be able to walk much further than out to the end of the driveway to the mailbox. Where now literally this morning I walked around two of our country blocks. So basically about a mile that I walked this morning. Huge, huge difference. We want to help them by showing them what we've been through. And then the last piece of this is this is what I discovered. This is what I found. I know this works for you because of this breakthrough that I had. Now, sometimes our breakthroughs happen in an instant. We have this really cool experience that happens to us, and in a flash, our lives are transformed. And often, transformation happens over time. I got this idea and then I began to start working on it. Again, if I was using my weight loss journey, the weight has come off slowly but surely. My coach encouraged me, don't weigh yourself much more than once a month because your weight's gonna, fluctuate. And having any kind of a loss every month is gonna feel good. Whereas from a day-to-day basis, it could fluctuate and it could be demotivating. So that's the same kind of thing. We want to share with them what we learned in our transformation. That's section one. And so now going back to our drawing, you're going to have the the breakdown of who you are and why you're teaching this, the sharing of yourself. This is who I am today, but it wasn't always that way. And this is what I learned. Okay. So now section two. Section two is going to be the line going down, pointing south, whichever way you want to do. Section two is our teaching. In a speaking concept, there's an old theory that is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. And most all teaching breaks down into that. First, we need to determine what is it that we want to tell them. So, the question I'm going to ask for you to ask yourself is, what does your ideal client need? Where are they, and where do they need to go? And I want you to think about it. Those of you that are older, like I am, if you remember Santa Claus is coming to town, you remember the old song, put one foot in front of the other. Um, what is the next step? Yes, you probably know 10, 15, 20 steps they need to take, but what is the next step? We often overwhelm people because we try to give them too much. I want you to try to think about a point, making that really clear, and then giving them a clear action from that one point. So when you know who your ideal client is, then you can ask yourself, where are they right now? And what do they need in order to get that next step? What is their next step? Okay. And so your drawing is going to look a little bit like this. On our line going down, we're going to, talk about that one thing. And so the first thing, and these are just notes for you. Nobody, you're not going to turn in your paper at the end of class. I'm not going to grade you or anything like that. It just needs to be something, so you can say, blah, blah, blah thing, and as long as you know what it means, the time with Aunt Jan, you may remember that miraculously breakthrough thing that your Aunt Jan taught you that has changed your life forever. As long as you understand the notes, this is all that we need to do in here, okay? What are we going to teach them? What's the one thing? What's the next step? If you've never written a book before, if you have no books that are out, typically, doesn't mean always, but typically, this would be kind of the introduction to what your course that you want to teach is. That's pretty normal, because normally the next thing after your first book is going to be a course that's based off of your best-selling book, and you just want to kind of introduce the concept to it. So then on our 3 lines on this, we're going to break down the what's and the stories of that. And you can think about things like, people you've worked through and the impact that it's made on their lives and the times that you learned it and how that worked for you. So I want to give you a second while I drink water here to make sure that you've filled in notes on those first 2 sections. So again, in section 2, we're just gonna teach them that one thing. What's one thing you could do now that in the situation I know you're in, because I've been there before myself, that if you do this one thing, we could break it down to something as simple as water. Um, all of us know that we're supposed to drink water. We know that about, I forget what the statistic was, but it's something like 85% of the population is dehydrated, and that they don't drink enough water on a daily basis. The one thing that we're going to teach them then would be about that. You need to be hydrated. Here's how being hydrated affects you. Your brain, if you're not hydrated, your brain, won't function properly. You can have memory issues. You can have, you can tell them all of the hows and the whats and the whys of why you want to be hydrated. Okay. So let's move on to the next section. Section 3 is, what is the downside to not doing this? We always want to, in section 3, and whenever we're teaching somebody, we want to take it away from them. Not because we're mean, but because of the fact that we need to help them take a look at the realities of both sides of the fence. We empower people when we let them know not only all the great stuff, if you do this thing, then you'll feel healthier and more vibrant and what have you. But if you don't do it, here's, the possibilities of it. Okay. And it could be, depending on what you're teaching, it could be less money, more stress. It could be if you don't change this thing, your business is going to continue down the direction of failure. I did an interview with a guy yesterday that was talking about how his business had gotten to that place where until he did the one thing that he was talking about in the interview, um, his business was on a trajectory that was the only possibility was bankruptcy. And so by telling the people the realities of that, and we're not doing it in that mean way, but rather just simply in that really helpful way of helping them see the course they're down. A lot of times we can't, we can't see the ditches that are ahead of us because we've never been down that road before. I often at this point like to refer to this as very similar to when we drive down the highway. When we drive down a highway, there are signs along the road. And sometimes the sign says, there's a dip up ahead, there's a curve coming up. The sign also tells us there's an exit. And then, there'll be a sign that'll tell us at this exit, you can get gas, you can get food, those kind of things. Because somebody went down the road before us to let us know, hey, this is where you need to do. And when you're driving through certain parts of the country, the sign will even tell you this is the last gas station for the next, if you're in Montana, I can tell you that there are certain places that you drive in Montana that if you see a gas station, you want to make sure your gas tank is 100% completely tip top full because you may be an entire gas tank before you see the next gas station. That's just the nature of driving across Montana, whether you're on Interstate 90 or, you're on one of the back roads, and some of the other states aren't like that, but, the highways give us those kind of signs, and that's kind of what we're doing for the people. Some of the questions that come up in that, and some of the things we're addressing in here come from when you've had those conversations with people and they say to you, I wish I would have known you sooner. I so wish I would have understood this concept before I did XYZ. The hope is for all of us, I know for me, whenever I'm talking to somebody, is that I can give somebody some information so that they don't have to say, oh gosh, Steve, I wish I would have known you before I spent the money on this or that kind of thing. So we can empower them by saying, telling them those kind of things now. You can also think about, and this would be a good one to make a note to yourself. If you could go back and depending on when you learned your solution, it could be 2 minutes ago, it could be 25 years ago. If you could go back and talk to the younger version of yourself before you discovered what you're teaching in section 2, what advice would you give you? What do you know now that you wish you could have known sooner? Now, that's not saying that life isn't wonderful and that, we're living in regret or anything like that, but just simply most all of us know that if we would have known then what we know now, we would have done it. The only reason why we didn't do it is because we didn't know, and so if we can empower those people with choice, with the information, okay, that's what section 3 is all about. So, and we don't have anybody on that I know of this time that's writing a fiction book, but I want to take a second and stop and just kind of relate all of this to if you're writing a story, if you're writing a fiction book. Section 1 would be introducing the protagonist, the main character. Luke Skywalker is this lonely boy living out in the middle of a desert, totally unhappy with his life. Okay. And then section two is the plot line. This is the interesting things that are happening in the world and how our hero is going to be a part of that. Okay. And then section three, if you were writing a three-act play, it would be what we call act two. But section three is the downturn. Section three is, Luke and Han are in the trash compactor, and C3PO and R2D2 are outside, and the trash compactor is closing in, and they hear them scream, and C3PO says, "Oh, I've killed my master," you know, and those of you that were, I think I was like 10 when I saw Star Wars for the first time, so, it has an impact on you, right? And it's those kind of things that in fiction, this process follows right along with as well. So I wanted you to see how, even in fiction books, this is all applying. Okay? And squeak at me or make a comment or something if I'm going too fast. I definitely do not want you guys to feel rushed at all. Um, okay, so let's move on to section four. Section four is what are the key things they can do right now. Now, as I told you at the beginning, I'm a marketing company, have been for the last 37 plus years. Your book is your primary piece of marketing. We want to leave the people in action. We want to give them an action. Okay. And we want to break that down into two different types of actions. Um, Now, it says in here 1 to 5 tips. It still is an action. There may be steps to that action. So I should probably change that word from tips to steps. We want it to be something that's practical, okay? And we want something that it's something that they can start doing right now. And then we're going to give them the step by step of how the person can take what you taught them and implement it. Now, there's two actions in our section four that we're going to give to the people. Action number one, what can the person set down the book and without any help from anybody else they could do right now? All right. What is something that a person can just simply do? So I'm going to go back to my example with water because it's a really great example. It would be literally go and get a drink of water right now. Don't just read this amazing book about how you need to be hydrated and set for yourself a goal of drinking more water. Actually, put the book down right now and go and get water. Okay. And then we can even break that into steps. Okay. We can make the steps of going to get a drink of water to be, and we can get really deep into it if you want to, but basically, if you think about it this way, turn away from your computer. Key point if you want to go and get a drink of water, and all of us know what it's like to just do one more thing, and have another hour go by when we wanted to get up and have lunch or get a drink of water or things like that. So turn away from your computer. Walk away from the computer and go into, say, for example, the kitchen. You know, get the glass out of the cupboard, fill it up with the water, and then drink the water right then. Why? Because if you bring the water back to your desk and you set it down next to you, you're then going to see your email again and you're going to answer just that one more email and forget to drink that water that you brought to the desk with you. Okay. Now you see how easy and I mean, I realize that that's a almost ludicrously simplified concept when we're talking about the whole concept of drinking water. But, by making it that easy and practical for people, then a person can actually begin that process. And that's something they can totally do on their own, right? That's the number one action. The number two action is what's the next step with you? As a marketer, I can tell you that we always want to give people a next step for us. So, like for example, when you're posting on social media, and I I try to remember this, but I fail at it sometimes too, so no judgment here. Um, but when we make a comment on somebody's post, we really should be making a comment that's intentionally interactive. So, in other words, when we say, um, yes, I absolutely, some of you that are in Molly's community, you'll love, her thing about Brussels sprouts. Yes, I absolutely hate Brussels sprouts. Why is it that but then we can tag it with a question. Why is it that you like Brussels sprouts? Or how do you prepare Brussels sprouts so that they aren't just gross for you? Now, those of you that aren't in Molly's community, you don't know the whole joke about Brussels sprouts, and I apologize for that. But, she always encourages people to post about Brussels sprouts, yes or no. But by just adding that little bit of interrogatory in there, the what do you like about Brussels sprouts? How do you prepare them? That keeps the conversation going. Okay. Additionally, when people comment on your social media, making a comment beyond that and keeping that conversation going is a great way to keep the algorithm and everything in social media happening and really going for you. But we want to give them something that they can start doing with you immediately. You finish the book, click on this link, go here, do this thing with me. So this is our northward bound line. We've put in our two actions, immediate action, what's the next step with me kind of action, that kind of a thing. Okay. So I want to go back and make sure that you know the 3 to 5 most important points for each section. Okay. In section 1, we are talking about who we are and how we discovered it. Okay. Who am I? How did I discover it? And we want to tell about our past. We want to be vulnerable and valuable to the people. In section 2, we want to tell them what we're solving, how we're going to solve it, and what does it solve for them. I love the phrase "so that you." There's the old concept of what's in it for me. How does that phrase go? WWIFM. I think if I said those initials right. We want to help them see themselves in it and give them the training on that. Section 3 is what's the downside? What are the things that people say, I wish I would have known you sooner? What's the advice you would have given to the younger version of yourself? What's going to happen if you just don't do it? And then in section 4, what can they do today? What action can they begin to take and continue taking on their own right now, immediately? And what is the step that they should go do with you right now? Now, are there any of these steps that you need help completing? Are there any of the places where you struggled? And you're like, well, Steve, I'm not completely sure. Well, I want you to also think in each of those and just put a little note on the side here of the stories that emphasize the most in your own life. The stories add color and context to it. And so I'd like to encourage you to put a vulnerable, valuable kind of a story for each one of those sections. Something that makes each of the things you've said in there real. Let me show you a picture of what I'm talking about. So for each section, in each one of the little corners there, just put, and you can put a note. So again, I talked about, the time that Aunt Jan told me about, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, do please make sure that if you're telling us the amazing story of Aunt Jan, that at the end you tell us what happened to Aunt Jan, because we're going to be dying to know. Okay. But just little stories, the time that John and I went to. The stories help people be able to see the value in it. So take a minute, make sure that you have those filled out, and put in a story or two, just a note to yourself of what story is going to be in each of those sections. I'm going to give you a minute or two here. And again, as I said before, as long as you can read it, as long as you know what it means, that's all that matters. There are no critiques. You all already got an A on this paper, okay? You got an A, a 100%, an A plus. You are worth it. Your story matters. And there's somebody that really wants to hear your story. And I want to be the first person to thank you for taking the time to do this so that you can make the impact in somebody's life that you're going to make. Okay. And guess what? Congratulations. You now have a rough draft for your book. Now, here's the best news I have for you for the whole entire thing. I'm going to encourage you to not write another word from here. I'm going to encourage you to do absolutely no more writing. Now, I know that seems counterintuitive to writing your book, but I'm absolutely going to encourage you to do just like Sir Richard Branson's done on all of his books and use the power of speaking to write, the power of interview to get your book. Now, in our process, we can take you from interview to your book being completely done and a bestseller in as little as 30 days. It's a book that's going to be in your voice, your words. It's going to bring out that vulnerability and authenticity of you. It's also going to be very conversational. We want it to sound like we would love for somebody that knows you really well to be able to say, I can totally hear you saying it just that way. That's the perfect kind of book. So you can literally take what we just did, and you could get a friend, or you can have me do it with you. Either way, and you're going to just simply speak out your book and get all the content out. So the question becomes, now that you have your rough draft done, you have a methodology for how you can get the whole rest of the book finished. What are you going to do with your book? What's your intentions behind your book? And maybe even more importantly, who is your book for? Because what I can tell you absolutely, someone is waiting on you. There's somebody that made a bad decision again today, last week, last month, last year. They don't know any better. And they're going to continue making those bad decisions until they hear from you. They need you to say what you're going to say the way that you're going to say it to make the point. You see, what I know to be true, and part of it is because I have kids of my own, and any of you that have kids, you understand this concept. The way that a certain person says a certain thing will resonate even when they've heard it a million times over. I often have people ask me, well, hasn't somebody already written all of these? Isn't every book already written? But you haven't written yours. And the reason why I say that, and the reason why I brought up my kids, besides the fact that I love them and they're wonderful, is that you know, we can have the thing that we tell to our children over and over and over and over again. And it gets to the point where we've said it so often they roll their eyes when we say it. That's also a clue, by the way, as to what is really important to you. But then one day they come home from school typically and they say, guess what Mrs. So and so said? And they look at us with this big bright smile. They're so excited. And they tell us that thing that we've been saying to them over and over and over. Like it's, like they just discovered the Holy Grail. They learned something that no one in the house has ever known before they brought this gem home. And of course it's a little frustrating. We kind of want to go, yeah, right. But instead we go, wow, that's really cool. Because the way that particular person said it resonated with them. And you're the same for the someone that's waiting on you. Whether your book is 10 years old or you haven't started it yet, we can help. We have a system, a process to help you reach the somebody that's waiting on you. And again, as I've said all throughout, anything I can do to help at bookhelpapplication.com. You can go there, fill out the little form, and I'm glad to help you out. You can see there the copy of one of my 22 best-selling books because someone is waiting on you. We have programs that are done for you, done with you, taught to you. And if you already have a book, we have marketing you programs. No matter where you are, what you do, you need to have your book and you need to have it completed to help the people that you're meant to serve. Because, like I said, somebody is waiting on you. They're going to continue making that bad choice, that bad decision until you come along and help them out. And I really encourage you to do it. Now, if you do need help, we do absolutely have a system where we guarantee that your book absolutely will be a bestseller. If you just know, I don't need to do an application, Steve, I know I want to work with you, you can skip the line and go straight to askstevekid.com and get right onto my calendar. There's no forms to fill out or anything. Well, I mean, there's a Calendly little booking form to get on my calendar. You can go straight there and do that. Or if you want further help and you want to talk more about where you are, we've got the help for you at bookhelpapplication.com because I'm here for you. I believe in you. And as I said before, I want to be the first one to thank you, to encourage you, and be the person who thanks you for doing what you do in the world and for sharing it with the world and for the impact that you're going to make on the lives of the people that only you can impact because that's what you were created to do. And guess what? I told you we were going to write your book in an hour, and exactly at 1 hour mark, congratulations, we just wrote your book. Now, what I'd love to do is open the floor up. Feel free to just unmute yourself and ask away. What questions do you have? How can I help you? Well, I am going to tell you that the other cool part about this is that this part is not going to be recorded. So go ahead.
So I will say thank you. And I came to learn, like I told you yesterday, and I've learned quite a bit.